Meish. Rain battered the slanted roof of the Victorian house in Astoria, Oregon, sounding like a relentless drum roll against the cedar shingles. Celine Jenkins sat on the floor of the dusty attic, her knees pulled to her chest, surrounded by a lifetime of cardboard boxes. It had been exactly 3 weeks since her mother, Margaret Jenkins, suffered a fatal heart attack in the middle of her beloved rose garden. Celine, an only child with no father in the picture, was left to dismantle the 40 years of quiet, comfortable life her mother had built. Margaret had been a pillar of the local community. She baked cherry pies for the church bake sales, volunteered at the local library, and had a soft, lilting laugh that could disarm anyone. To Celine, she was the universe of fiercely protective, endlessly loving single mother who had worked double shifts at a diner to put Celine through nursing school. But as Celine packed away old winter coats and moth-eaten blankets, her foot caught on a raised edge of the floor. A single wooden plank near the brick chimney was misaligned. Celine knelt, running her fingers along the rough wood. It was loose. Prying it up with the edge of a flathead screwdriver she brought upstairs, she expected to find old wiring or perhaps mouse droppings. Instead, sitting in the hollow space between the joists, lay a heavy, dark green metal lockbox. It was covered in a thick layer of grime, untouched for decades. A small brass padlock secured the latch. Celine's heart did a strange, erratic flutter. Her mother had never mentioned a lockbox. In fact, Margaret was famously disorganized, keeping receipts in shoeboxes and her will in a kitchen drawer. This deliberate concealment felt entirely out of character. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable urgency, Celine marched downstairs to the kitchen, retrieved a heavy meat mallet, and returned to the attic. It took 3 solid, deafening blows to shatter the rusted brass padlock. The lock gave way with a metallic snap. Celine lifted the heavy lid. Inside, the air smelled of stale paper and dried lavender. The first thing she pulled out was a manila envelope. The flap was unsealed. Celine slid the contents onto the dusty floorboards. It was a birth certificate. The name printed in faded typewriter ink read Margaret Ann O'Connor. Born June 14, 1952. Reno, Nevada. Celine frowned. That was her mother's maiden name and birth date. But right beneath it was another document. A certificate of death. Celine's breath hitched in her throat. She stared at the paper, reading the lines over and over until the letters blurred. Name, Margaret Ann O'Connor. Date of death, October 14, 1982. Cause of death, blunt force trauma, secondary to a motor vehicle collision. This doesn't make any sense, Celine whispered to the empty room. Her mother died 3 weeks ago, in 2026. Who was the woman who died in Reno in 1982? And why did her mother have this document hidden beneath the floorboards? Hands trembling, Celine reached back into the metal box. She pulled out a small, worn leather diary with cracked binding. She flipped to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably her mother's, the looping cursive, the heavy pressure on the T-crosses. But the name inscribed on the inside cover sent a chill down Celine's spine. Property of Clara Higgins. Celine turned to a random entry in the middle of the book. November 12, 1985. Thomas drank again tonight. I locked myself in the bathroom, but he broke the door off the hinges. He told me if I ever tried to leave him, he would use his badge to hunt me down and put a bullet in my head. I know he isn't lying. The other cops in the precinct cover for him. I have no one to call. I have to disappear. I have to become someone else. Celine dropped the diary as if it had burned her. Thomas? Clara? Her mother's name was Clara Higgins. She had been married to a violently abusive police officer. The realization washed over Celine in a cold wave. Her mother hadn't just been a sweet baker in a coastal Oregon town. She had been a fugitive running for her life. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Celine picked the diary back up. She skimmed through the pages detailing a harrowing escape in the dead of night. A bus ride to Nevada, and a desperate transaction in a seedy motel room. Clara had paid $5,000, her life savings, to a man who specialized in ghosting. He gave her the birth certificate and social security number of a woman who had recently died in a car crash with no living relatives to claim her body. Clara Higgins died, and Margaret Jenkins, a newly invented surname, was born. Celine sat back, wiping a tear from her cheek. The revelation was staggering, but it filled her with a profound, aching pity for the woman who had raised her. Her mother had survived unimaginable terror to build a safe life for the two of them. It was a brave, desperate act. But there was still a thick stack of papers at the bottom of the box. Celine reached in and pulled out a newspaper clipping, yellowed and brittle with age. The banner at the top read The Seattle Chronicle. The date was September 4th, 1988. The headline screamed in bold, black letters, Toti dar abadisted from local park. Police. Search for missing 18 on hold a Bogle Foster. Beneath the headline was a grainy black and white photograph of a blonde, blue-eyed baby girl. Celine stared at the picture. The blood drained from her face, leaving her feeling lightheaded and sick. She knew that face. She had seen it in her own childhood photo albums, labeled Celine's first birthday. Frantically, she read the article. 18-month-old Abigail Foster vanished yesterday afternoon from Centennial Park. Her mother, Cynthia Foster, reported turning her back for just a moment to speak to a friend. When she turned around, Abigail was gone. The child was last seen wearing a pink corduroy dress. She has a distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark behind her left ear. Slowly, as if moving through deep water, Celine raised her left hand. She reached behind her left ear, her fingertips brushing through her hair until they found the smooth, slightly raised patch of skin shaped like a half-moon. She wasn't Celine Jenkins. She was Abigail Foster. Her mother, the warm, loving, pie-baking woman who had read her bedtime stories and held her when she cried, was a kidnapper. Panic and nausea clawed at Celine's throat. She grabbed the leather diary and furiously flipped to the pages matching the date of the newspaper clipping. She needed an explanation. She needed her mother to tell her this was a mistake, a coincidence, a misunderstanding. She found the entry dated September 5, 1988. I did something unforgivable today. God forgive me, I don't know if I am a savior or a monster. I was walking through the park in Seattle. I saw her. She was sitting in the dirt, crying. Her mother was 20 feet away, pass out on a park bench with a needle still gripped in her hand. The woman was practically blue. The men around her were laughing, looking at the little girl with eyes that made my blood run cold. I stood there for 10 minutes. No one helped her. No one cared. I remembered the doctors telling me I could never have children because of what Thomas did to me. I looked at that little girl and my heart shattered. I just walked over, picked her up, and walked away. She stopped crying the moment I held her. The news is saying she was abducted from a loving mother. They are lying. That woman was going to let her die, or worse. I will be her mother now. I will name her Celine. I will give her the safest, most beautiful life in the world. I will never let anyone hurt her. Celine closed the diary. The attic was completely silent, save for the drumming of the rain. She felt as though the floor had completely dropped out from underneath her. Her entire existence, her memories, her identity, all of it, was built on a monumental crime. Yes, Clara had seen a child in danger. Yes, she had provided a wonderful life, but she had stolen a human being. Over the next few weeks, Celine moved through her life like a ghost. She returned to her job at the hospital, but she couldn't focus. Every time she looked in the mirror, she didn't see Celine Jenkins. She saw a missing poster. She saw Abigail Foster. She couldn't go to the local police. The scandal would rip through Astoria, destroying the legacy of the woman she still, despite everything, loved deeply. But she also couldn't live with the silence. She needed to know what happened to the family she was taken from. Celine hired a private investigator in Portland, a retired detective named Alex Pendleton. She paid him a retainer from her mother's Clara's life insurance policy, handing him a copy of the newspaper clipping. She didn't tell him how she found it, only that she believed she was the girl in the photo. It took Alex 3 weeks to unravel the tragedy of the Foster family. When he called her into his dingy, wood-paneled office in downtown Portland, his face was grave. "I found them, Celine," Alex said, tapping a manila folder on his desk. He looked at her with a mixture of professional detachment and deep sympathy. "Or what's left of them." "Tell me," Celine said, her voice barely a whisper. Alex opened the folder. "Your biological mother, Cynthia Foster. The kidnapping. It broke her. According to police records and interviews with old neighbors, she hit rock bottom immediately after you were taken. But then something shifted. She got clean. Completely sober. She spent the next 25 years of her life looking for you. She started a foundation for missing children. She handed out flyers every year on your birthday." Celine squeezed her eyes shut as hot tears spilled over her lashes. Clara's diary had painted Cynthia as a hopeless addict who didn't care. Clara had justified her crime by believing Cynthia was a lost cause, but losing her daughter was the catalyst that saved Cynthia's life. "Where is she now?" Celine asked, her voice cracking. "Can I see her?" Alex sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, Celine. Cynthia passed away from ovarian cancer in 2015. She died never knowing what happened to you." A sob tore from Celine's chest. She buried her face in her hands, weeping for a mother she had never known, a woman who had spent her entire life searching for a ghost while Celine was safely tucked away just a few hundred miles down the coast. Alex waited patiently, pushing a box of tissues across the desk. When Celine finally caught her breath, he flipped a page in the folder. "But," Alex continued softly, "Cynthia didn't die entirely alone. 2 years after you were taken, after she got clean, she had another child. You have a younger sister. Her name is Rebecca. She lives in Seattle. She's a high school English teacher." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "Here is her phone number and address." For 3 days, the piece of paper sat on Celine's kitchen counter. She stared at it while drinking her morning coffee. She stared at it while washing dishes. Picking up the phone meant detonating a bomb that would destroy 2 families. It meant telling a stranger that the mother she loved was a kidnapper. But the truth had a weight that Celine could no longer carry alone. On a Tuesday afternoon, Celine dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Hello?" The voice was bright, clear, and hauntingly familiar. "Hi," Celine choked out. She tightened her grip on the phone. "Is this Rebecca Foster?" "Yes, it is." "Who's calling?" "My name is Celine Jenkins. But 37 years ago, my name was Abigail." There was a profound, suffocating silence on the other end of the line. Celine could hear the faint sound of a television in the background. Then the clatter of something dropping, perhaps a phone slipping from trembling fingers. "Abby?" Rebecca's voice came back, barely a breath, fractured with disbelief. Is it really you?" "It's me," Celine whispered. They agreed to meet halfway in a quiet coffee shop in Tacoma. When Celine walked through the door, she didn't need to look for a name tag. Sitting in a booth by the window was a woman who looked exactly like her. They had the same wavy blonde hair, the same shape of the eyes, the same nervous habit of chewing on their lower lip. Rebecca stood up, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. She didn't hesitate. She crossed the room and pulled Celine into a desperate, crushing embrace. For the first time in weeks, Celine felt angered. They sat in the booth for 6 hours. The coffee grew cold. Celine told Rebecca everything. She showed her the diary, the birth certificates, the lockbox. She told her about Clara Higgins, the abuse, the desperate flight, and the warped, tragic justification for taking a child from a park. Rebecca listened, crying silently for the sister she lost and the mother who died broken-hearted. But to Celine's surprise, Rebecca didn't offer hatred. My mother, our mother was very sick back then, Rebecca said softly, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. She always told me that losing you was the punishment she deserved, but finding herself was the gift you gave her. If you hadn't been taken, she might have died in that park, and I wouldn't exist. Celine looked out the window at the passing cars, the street lights reflecting on the wet pavement. Her mind felt like a tapestry woven from two completely different threads. One thread was Clara, the terrified woman who stole a child but raised her with absolute, unwavering devotion. The other thread was Cynthia, the broken woman who lost her child and spent the rest of her life trying to be worthy of her return. She had inherited a house filled with antique furniture and memories of warm cherry pies. But she had also inherited a legacy of trauma, secrets, and a stolen life. As Rebecca reached across the table and took Celine's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze, Celine realized that she didn't have to choose between the two truths. She was Celine Jenkins, the fiercely loved daughter of a fugitive. And she was Abigail Foster, the long-lost sister who had finally come home. Both women had shaped her. Both mothers had loved her in the only fractured, desperate ways they knew how. "Are you ready to come to Seattle?" Rebecca asked, a tentative smile breaking through her tears. "I have 25 years of our mother's journals to show you. She wrote to you every single day." Celine squeezed her sister's hand back, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over the chaos in her heart. "I like that," Celine said. "Take me home."